everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Kick-Ass Career Conversations. I am Kim.
I am the other one. I'm Louise.
And we have Hollis with us today.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, we're so excited to have you. As always, we're going to dig in with the fun stuff. Well, the whole thing is fun stuff, but we're going to dig in with what we're celebrating this week. What are we celebrating, friends?
I am celebrating. Now, you would think I would be celebrating a new knee because I do have one of those. But today I want to celebrate this this idea. We were kind of talking about it before we jumped on, is the idea of how we see ourselves sometimes as burdens. And I'm really leaning into not seeing myself as one and reaching out and asking for help. I have a great support network all over the place that's been able to support me. And I've been leaning on them, which is quite different than how I've recovered in the past. So I'm celebrating, I guess that is helping or getting help carrying my burden this week. And has been really, it's been really amazing.
I love that. I love that. So proud of you too, because I know that that's been a big step.
It is. It's a story I carry, right? And I wrote about it last week before my surgery around like feeling different about having a burden and being a burden. And I have a burden for sure, but I'm not a burden. And it's just that little kind of, right, like little reframe that has really helped me this last week.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hollis, what are you celebrating?
It's just, that's a little tweak. That's a huge tweak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? Yeah.
It really is. I am celebrating, it may sound silly, but I am celebrating having a meal plan for the week.
That is huge. Another small that's huge.
It really is. So our daughter was away for 5 weeks. She came back and I'm like, can you please sit down with me and let's just plan the week? And we did. And we had all the food in the house. And it wasn't like, oh, what am I making tonight? Because that I find becomes a huge stress. And kind of knew what was happening. And the kids are like, our kids are like 20 and 23, but we have like a chalkboard and they're like, you're really extra. On the chalkboard, I'm writing menu tonight. It made me feel really accomplished. So yeah, I'm celebrating that.
Well, and you put the menu on the board. So it takes me back to the beginning of pandemic times when we were all still just in our own little homes. I bought, to keep us all organized, a gigantic whiteboard that lived in our dining room, which was the center of the house. And we would do that. We would put like the menu and we would make it artistic and pretty and colorful and the schedule for the day with little icons that we would create on it because it creates that little extra. And I know extra has several meanings right now. And that extra place of like, no, this is good. This is fun. This can be enjoyable.
Yeah. Agreed.
Awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh,
thanks for asking. It's so funny because I literally here's my shopping list. I sat down with our daughter just before this and I said, let's make sure that we have it because I don't want to spend tomorrow dealing with this. And so she pulled it all together. She pulled together all of the recipes that she wanted for the week. And then I made the list and I ordered the stuff online that I'm going to order online and took care of all of that. So it's huge to be able to like take the time to do it and get that system for yourself. So I'm celebrating that with you.
It is. Thank you.
You're welcome. My celebration this week has been getting my nervous system back. The last 6 weeks have left me really janky. I have been feeling anxiety like I hadn't felt in many years. And it was just a culmination of things. It was no one thing that kind of sent me over the edge or anything, but really spending time intentionally the latter part of last week and then all of this week, both with some support systems that Louise was talking about, as well as myself, supporting myself, to use the tools that I have to re-regulate myself. And I am in such a different place than I was. Yeah. So each day gets better. And so that I'm really I am celebrating my nervous system being re-regulated.
It's huge.
It is huge. Yeah. 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 I can't imagine. I was walking around deregulated like that for years and didn't really understand what it meant. And now that I do, and I've had decades of understanding this, I know how to fix it, how to get back, and it is night and day. It's just fascinating how fast it can change. So very cool.
It's all about we're talking about like these little energy leaks, right? That we have. There's like all three of us have found this way to say, hey, how can I plug this hole here? I'm not being my best self, or I can be something, show up a little bit differently, or be something a little bit different. And it's this just finding that leak and finding a way to plug it. I love that.
Yeah. Beautiful way to summarize that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is such a great visual. I completely see that. Yeah. Very good visual.
Totally. Well, Hollis, before we go any further, I think we should probably let people know the brilliance of you. So you're welcome. So I'm going to share your bio with the world. So Hollis is known as the Creativity Doula. I can stop right there because anybody that comes up with the title Creativity Doula, like you want to have this person in your life. She guides entrepreneurs to birth their stories and get them out into the world. She's a book publisher on a mission to create spaces that give men and women permission to unleash their voices, break through blocks, and confidently share their experiences and perspectives with the world. She is passionate about helping people build confidence to recognize, encourage, and express the innate creativity that they are born with. Creativity goes beyond the pencil and the brush. Creativity is your unique and original exploration, expansion, expression of your imagination.
It's like anytime you hear a bio about yourself, isn't it like, it's kind of like, are they talking about me? Yeah.
Yeah, like, ooh, that's a cool person. I want to know them.
I do all that.
Really? Me?
Hollis, where did this creativity doula, where did that come from? Is that what you always imagined, like this kind of this space where you help people pull out the threads of their stories? Is that where you always thought you'd be?
Well, it's so funny because, so to give you the quick version of where the title came from, and then the quick backtrack of who I am, what led up to this. So I was working with a client, and I'm helping her to publish her children's book. And she said to me, she's like, Hollis, are you ready? You have your doula certification. You ready? You ready to help me birth this baby? And at first I didn't I was like, I took her literally. I'm like, well, we had a doula for our son. and then I was like, oh, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then a friend of mine said, you're a book doula. I said, I'm not a book doula. I'm a creativity doula. Because that's really the whole encompasses everything. Because in my world, you don't have to be a quote unquote writer to be in a book or to have a book. And that doesn't mean make a bunch of bad books. It just means everybody has a story to share and to tell. And there's many ways to do that. So, art teacher, 30 plus years. I left the classroom 5 years ago. I've taught in many different spaces and places, be it traditional, non-traditional being artisan residencies, professional developments, my own businesses, to more traditional being public, private, and charter schools, predominantly working in underserved communities. But what I've kind of found was I was always, since I'm 19 years old, and I've been in this space of leading a room, I've always said, you don't have to know how to draw or paint to be a creative person. And it all kind of culminated. It's interesting how we build on ourselves and find more things. And then we're like, oh, it makes sense. It's like, when you're lucky enough to kind of be clear, anyway, I think you get clear on what you do. Sometimes it's a really crooked line. Sometimes it's a more curvy line. Mine has been a very curvy line, but it's all been kind of enmeshed leading up to one very clear mission, I feel like.
Well, I think our career journeys are rarely a straight line. Like I often see it as a crayon scribble on a piece of paper, right? Like it's the same thread. Like we're the same person going through all of these twists and turns. Sometimes we're intentional about it, and sometimes we're not. And we quickly find out when we're not intentional, we end up in a place where we do have to pivot or we do have to turn. But like, how boring to have a straight line, right? From A to B. It's like, it is all of these curves and twists and wanders and self-actualization and discovery. I think career journeys in themselves can be really creative, and they're so unique to each and every person.
Agreed. And I think it's just important to realize it's kind of like, oh, when people have the self-awareness, kind of like Kim, what you were kind of alluding to, I kind of heard from your, what you were celebrating is this is self-awareness. So when you realize that if you've worked in department stores or you had the customer service job where you're working in restaurants and being a hostess or waitress or bus person or whatever, that all of these things lead up to in this place that I'm at, and calling myself a creativity doula and doing book publishing, all of those skills help me on the way to this, with customer service, with being patient, with listening to people, with observing situations, with communication skills, all of that. No matter what it looks like, even if it's a job that you really don't like, it still helps you in your journey.
Oh, absolutely. It feeds something, right?
Yeah.
And for me, when I started recognizing that I didn't have to understand what the tools were that I was gaining, what the skills were, hard skills I was recognizing that I was gaining, but I may not have been recognizing the other skills at that time, the tools that I was able to add to my toolbox. And I had a coach and a mentor a couple of years ago asked me, she said, list out all of the things that you can help somebody with. I had pages of stuff because I had realized I had collected so many different things over all the different iterations of self just through my career, let alone outside of my career, what I had gained.
Yeah.
And I think we lose track of that because we think we're supposed to be creating something more linear instead of this octopus scribble that we create.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious where you are now, right? With what the work that you're doing in the world right now. Where are those edges for yourself that you're still crafting your own career?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of really am right in the middle of that now. It's for me, as I'm gaining more clarity on what my purpose is and how I fit into this space. So I didn't know, honestly, I was going to be a publisher. It just, for me, kind of felt like it presented, and it feels like a natural. I've always wanted to craft safe spaces for people to express and to share their stories. So this felt like another natural way to do that. So I'm kind of in a space now where I'm like, okay, I'm all about expanding the definition of creativity and within a book. And now I'm really working on, and I can't go into a lot of detail about it, but I'm creating more interactive books. So it's it's melding. It's becoming more of like, okay, Hollis, who are you? And what are you here to do? And I'm really getting excited because I'm like, okay. Now I know how I can really, like, if I'm going to be in this space, which I want to be in this space, how can I be more of my authentic self in this space? So, and just like a ton of new things, like even today, I was dealing with one of my authors that helping to upload his book into a new space, into a new publishing space where they're print on demand. And I said to him from the beginning, I said, this is my first time doing it in this space. So please be patient with me. So there is this idea of perfectionism where it's like, it's embarrassing in a sense. It's kind of like, oh my God, did I mess up? Like, honestly, I was a little tense and a little stressed while I was doing it, just because I think I was being harder on myself than he was being hard on me, because I want to look like the expert or whatever you want to call it, that I know what I'm doing. But here I was calling this place, this publishing space, I think I've called them like 15 times over just to ask some questions, because I keep saying, this is my first time working with you. This is what I'm used to, but yours is a little different. So it's just more self-awareness and realization for myself of it's a learning process, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I love those questions too. And we often get stuck in the how. But the question, like you were just saying, it's like, who am I and what do I want to, put out into the world? We often don't know the how, but we skip to the how and think that's the answer. And so taking some time to kind of sit in that and get really clear in what that is. And then who knows what the universe puts in front of you around the how. Right? Or what opportunities. But if we don't know who we are or why we're doing what we're doing or what we want to put out into the world, the how is never the answer. It's just the final bow on the present.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because as I was sharing, because one of the contributors in one of my books was sharing this idea with me, and she's like, oh, well, you probably thought of this. And then I said, no, I didn't think of that. And that's brilliant. And then I was sharing this idea with another friend. It's this whole idea of community and how we kind of work off of each other. We can't do this alone. So as I was talking to this one person, he's like, oh, well, there's this new technology and you could do this, this, and this, and that would be easy. I'm like, for you? What are you talking about? I'm like, you've got me so excited right now with the possibilities. Like, I can't sleep. And I just, tell me more. So then it's a matter of just like connecting the dots. Then he told me a little bit more and I did some research, and then he connected me with somebody who I'm like, would you work on this with me? And she's like, yeah, this actually combines all of my background and talents. And I haven't used this before, but I'm excited. I'm like, are you willing to take this journey with me and like play with it? And she's like, yeah, I'm excited. So just like you said, Louise, it's like, I don't know the how. It's like we're figuring it out as we go along. But I'm so friggin' excited.
I love that. Well, that's what happens when we ditch the how. When we ditch the how, we get to feel all the things. I've had this conversation so many times recently where when we ditch the how, we allow ourselves to experience abundance, excitement, joy, curiosity, creativity, the splendor and wonder of the world. It's like that all exists when we're not focused on the how.
Yeah.
What's come to me when I'm listening to the two of you is a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing. I want to know in each of your opinions, which comes first, curiosity or creativity?
Is that for me to answer first?
Sure.
It's a good question. When I always ask people, how do you define creativity? And to me, creativity is life. It's in every aspect of everything. It's in the words that I'm sculpting. It's in how I chose to dress, if I wear makeup or don't, how I accessorize, what am I going to eat? How am I going to organize my day? Like all of that, it's taking something that didn't exist and now it does. But I think in just kind of talking this out loud, I mean, there has to be a curiosity with it too. So you have to be curious in order to you can wake up and you could be like, everything could be the same old, same old. You're in a routine and nothing changes. So you're still creating. I mean, every day you're creating something, but in thinking it out loud, there's kind of like a different energy that comes along with it. So I think curiosity is just really, once you get really curious, then it's kind of like, ooh, then things really start to kind of like the floodgates open up.
So sort of like when you allow that curiosity, that spark of curiosity to exist, then possibility can open, and therefore potentially new creativity can exist.
Because as I'm thinking, it's like kind of like the meal thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's say I have spaghetti every night for dinner, and we have a conversation. What are you having for dinner? Oh, I'm having spaghetti with vegetables and like a primavera sauce. Or if I'm doing something different and I've actually been curious and I'm like, what new can I have for dinner? Then it's kind of like, then we have the conversation and I'm like, I'm making this sandwich that I've never made before. And it's going to have hummus and it's going to have vegetables and it's going to have this and it's going to have that. And then I'm going to have a side salad. And then it's like, there's a different energy that's connected to it. And it's stemmed from curiosity.
So curiosity leads to creativity, which leads to innovation, or somewhere in there, because now you've innovated.
Yes.
Because that word gets thrown around a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it. Like, I really think we can't be creative without being curious. Like, we can't create something brand new to ourselves or to the world if we aren't curious about something, right? I'm curious about, right, what is yellow and green, right, combined together? Like, what does that look like? I'm curious about, right, I'm curious about, like, right, does this sweater go with these pants? I'm curious about, right, what if I did my hair a different way? Like, I think, like, it's the curiosity that is the driver for us to be in that creative space. And then if we're lucky, creativity leads to more curiosity. And it leads to, right, it builds our confidence. It does all of these things because now it builds that energy inside us that now we're excited that all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I put these things together and now look, what have I done? And now I get to do more, or I get to see things differently. It gives us a different perspective. It gives us different evidence or data too about what we believe to be true. And so I think that it's the question, that it's the question mark that drives our creativity. And then hopefully it just grows from there.
So if somebody is struggling with being curious, because Louise, I know you and I talk to people all the time, and Hollis, I'm going to just make an assumption that as people show up in your world, they're like, I don't have a story to tell. And it comes from that lack of curiosity sometimes, right? That exists for all of us.
Yeah.
If somebody's struggling with curiosity and then they land on this place, I'm not creative, how do we help them?
For me, in my world, it usually stems from someplace. It stems from an experience. So it stems from an experience, and it's generally a negative experience. They were told somewhere along the line that they weren't good at something. There was some kind of perception of that. They either believe that they're not good at it, but usually it's because the extenuating circumstances around them shut them down in some way. So that's what I've seen in the creative world of actually creating things, no matter what it is. So when I'm talking to people in that way, usually it's, especially if I've just gotten to know them, it's not like you're not just going to dive into people's deep, dark secrets, but you're just, it's finding out what they like. It's like baby steps of just kind of starting to be a little bit curious, of just finding what do you enjoy? And if they're even not sure about that, it's like, do you like music? Do you like, going for walks? Do you like nature? Do you like food? Do you like having a special drink or something? And it's just starting to engage them, to meet them where they're at, and just kind of start to introduce, even maybe just switching up the routine a little bit and introducing a little bit of something new, because you can't go from A to Z. If somebody told you that you are the worst writer ever and you will never amount to anything, but you have this burning desire inside to write something, and you always have felt that you have something in you, but you still have that big story playing of the you suck. You can't just, I can't come in and just erase that belief. There has to be some kind of smaller curiosity in that word, those actions, to kind of replace it, in my mind.
Absolutely. Like, I think it's no different than when I talk to my clients about their careers and right. Like, I have so many people show up at my doorstep that say, like, I don't know what I want to do. Right. I'm not doing it, but I don't know what I want. There's something more for me. Right. It's that same energy, and it's usually the same kind of stories that they carry around, right? Like, this is what you do. Here's your 9 to 5 job. This is what work means. This is right. These are the things, but it's like, no, there's more for me. This isn't the path that I want to be on. I just don't know what else could be out there. And it is about being really curious and having people craft their own ideas, being creative in their own answers, in their own explorations. It's no different. Kim, would you?
Totally agree. Yeah, I know with the both those that work for other people as well as the entrepreneurs that I work with, they feel like they show up in this place that's stuck, right? I think all three of us have people will show up when they're stuck. And it's like, how do I shake this loose? And when we are, it's the spaghetti, right? That you're talking about. If I have spaghetti every day, I don't know. I know there's other options, but I don't know how to access those other options. Like, how do I even start to access those other options? You just start.
Yeah.
You just start. And that is the basis of, I think, Hollis, what you were saying with those questions of just pick. It doesn't matter what the question
Doesn't matter.
does not matter what the question is. It doesn't matter what the answer is. Just pick one, because that starts. Louise, you were talking about energy earlier, right? We were filling our energy holes. We were helping to kind of put that energy salve back on ourselves. And it's the same idea, right? It's just shifting the energy.
Yes.
By just picking something and moving in a different direction, brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Just doing that shifts your energy.
It's what I found for myself is that even like, I have never thought of myself as a person who works out. I don't like it. It doesn't make me happy. It doesn't bring me joy. It's something that I've always kind of told myself. I have my family around me who people are engaged in wanting to exercise. So I've always kind of felt like, oh my God, it's not motivating me, but I'm feeling frustrated. So, and it's been a while that I felt this way, but I think I finally got to a point to where a friend reached out to me and said, do you want to come over and just exercise for 30 minutes? And at first I resisted, but then I was actually mentally in a space to be like, I can do 30 minutes. That's something I can do. And if it's something that I do twice a week, I can do that. Mm-hmm. That's not like an everyday thing. We're not doing a boot camp. We're not doing like all of that kind of stuff. Like, I can do that. And what I've noticed is that since I've even changed up that one little routine, I feel better.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I feel better.
It's the same thing with creativity, right? That we were talking about. When people don't feel creative, just try. I know that I do own the capital A artist moniker in my life. I've taken ownership of that. I'm like, I am an artist. Now, I haven't partaken in actual creation of art since we moved to Montreal. Not really. I did a couple of days, but I haven't had the ongoing practice of creating art. And yet I still own it for myself, because that was a really big thing for me to be able to say, I am a creatrix. I do these things in the world. And for me, while I recognize that I also am creative as a cook, right? I love to cook. So in the kitchen, I'm creative in terms of design, in how I wear my clothes and hair. Like, I know all of that. That wasn't enough to feed my soul. But when I started to own, because art to me, visual art, theatrical art, performance art has always been a part of who I am, in my blood. And yet I didn't own that for much of my life. And once I took a hold of that, because I said, I do create, it allowed me to create, if that makes sense. So sometimes it's not even the physical act of doing something. Setting aside 30 minutes to exercise is phenomenal. And for me, setting aside 30 minutes for art felt really heavy right now since we've moved up here. And yet I'm not giving up that part of me that's still inside of me, who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just really important for people to understand and own that it just comes in so many different forms. And I love that you just said is that just because I'm not doing it right now doesn't mean that I'm not a creative person. And to you, that's what that represents. What I really love talking to people about and is saying, like, in the niceties of what you do. And when I'd say, art teacher, there's usually a visceral reaction. People usually put their hands up or say, I can't draw a straight line, or I don't know how to draw or paint. Those are generally the responses that happen. And then I say, I went to art school. I don't know how to draw or paint. And they're like, what? I'm like, I studied ceramics. Like I'm much more three-dimensional in the way as far as the visual arts go. As I've gotten older, I've kind of had an idea more so and then find the medium that'll work for it. And then I figure it out. It's not as linear. But then when I say, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, I'm in business. I'm like, oh my God, do you realize that you sculpt words? Do you realize that you take ideas and bring them to life? Do you realize that you're a problem solver? Do you realize that you're a good listener? If you're a good salesperson, you're a really good listener. You can look at people, you can read body language, you know how to kind of do the dance. And that's creative. And then when people say, "Oh, I've never actually thought of it that way." Then there's like literally you see people stand straighter. And then you see people feel more connected to self, where then they can feel more connected to others. Like, it's really not that complicated, but it feels complicated when you're all your emotions and everything. When we're more here than we are here.
Mm-hmm.
We're stuck in our head and we're not really coming from our heart. And I don't mean to say that to be all like hippy dippy kind of thing, but it's kind of like it really is from your heart center when you're more here, because the brain, we could talk ourselves into and out of a lot of things. We make ourselves a little nuts.
More than a little.
Well, and I think, as we see technology advance and all of these things that are going on in the world of work right now, creativity is such a hot commodity. Creativity and curiosity are going to surpass like anything. If you can think outside the box, right, you're golden. You're going to be not just elevating yourself, but you're going to be helping and creating solutions that nobody else could do. It's your unique gift and creativity, like you said, Hollis. Like we just think it belongs like on paper or right, like on a wall, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
With the technologies that are out there's a lot of people that are who don't even consider themselves creative at this point, who are terrified that all creativity is just going to be done through technology. And the art of creating will shift over time. I'm just checking on Louise. Okay, good. Well, the skills of creation will change and adapt as they have over millennia already. The heart part that you were talking about, Hollis, the emotional component of it comes from being a human being. So that aspect of creativity will not become part of technology. Right? That part is what comes from us. And we may be challenged to analyze something as quickly and as seriously, my dog is like creating an earthquake over here. as quickly or as completely as a computer, right? It's hard for us to keep up with computers in terms of how fast we can analyze things. We still need our own human decision process, our creative process, to be able to say, is this what we want to come forward with or not? So thank you for the data. We're going to make the final decision.
Yeah.
Because we're creative. That's who we are. That's the cool thing about humans. And I love, Hollis, what you said before is we are always creating. Everything we do is creating.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was, I forget, I think it was Jen Sincero in her Badass series. It's just saying every day is a blank canvas and you get to paint it if you want to see it visually that way. You get to paint the canvas every day of what that's going to look like. And what I actually wanted to respond to also, the difference between technology and people, I think that, and it's something I'm learning to embrace more, is the power of the pause. Because that's something we as humans can do, is pause in conversation. There can be a weirdness in the pause. People need to fill it because it gets a little uncomfortable. It's like, well, who's going to talk next? And did they hear me? Did they not like me? Did they think it was stupid what I just said, or whatever it is? Like the power, but that's that human element of like, it's like a processing thing. And we also have a choice on, as we're creating, if we're going to pause something or move forward. Like not everything has to be taken to the nth degree. Some things are good to where they've gone, and then it can just, that's as far as it needs to be birthed.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been an incredible conversation. And what I love about it is this idea that as human beings, right, the creative nature of human beings exists in all we do. By simply waking up and doing what we do every day, we continue to be creative beings. And that creativity is not about how many books you've written or how much art you've created that is on somebody's walls, or being a celebrity known for all of that you're producing in the world. Creativity shows up in all of the elements of humanity.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
You hear that, everybody? You are a creative being. Own it. Love it.
Yeah. The golden nugget I have from today is just that reminder, Hollis, that you said around like let's get out of our heads and into our hearts, right? And when we can get into our bodies, we can get into that place. That's where that curiosity, creativity, all the juicy goodness, that's where it comes from. And we can logic ourselves into a corner if we don't pause and take a moment to say, like, where is this really coming from? And then we get to birth that creativity forward in whatever space we so desire.
I love that. Logic ourselves into a corner.
We can, for sure.
Done that once or twice.
Never.
No, you've never done that. No.
The other day I came upstairs and like the family was there, the two kids and my husband, and I said, I was just over analyzing something, and they're like, that's very unusual.
Wow. It's awesome. Hollis, what's your takeaway from our conversation today?
So much. I just really appreciated that question about which comes first, curiosity or creativity. I think that's a whole podcast just unto itself for talk about for hours. So I think that's that's just going to kind of have me thinking for the rest of the day.
You're welcome.
So yeah, thank you. Just the conversation. Thank you for providing the space and
absolutely our pleasure. Yeah, I think for me, my takeaway is just it was like a passing comment you made about looking like the expert, right? You were talking about uploading this book today, and how much that idea of looking like an expert prevents us from leaning into our true creativity.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. It does.
So that's my takeaway, is just reminding myself, reminding others, we don't have to do that. We don't have to be the expert. We can constantly be learning. And it's okay. It's good.
Well, we're going to make mistakes. It's like everybody, you're going to screw up. If you want to call it that, like whatever you want to call it, like it's not going to always go the way we think it's going to go.
Right.
And it's just a matter of saying, at times it's a matter of saying sorry, or I'm learning, or okay, that didn't work, and just kind of laughing about it and then moving on. Like none of us are perfect. This whole perfectionism thing has just got to like get rid of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother thing as well. I just think about the number of times that I've been having these conversations with our daughter. She's 13, about the reports coming out from the Surgeon General in the United States about not allowing teenagers, or limiting the amount of time that teenagers are on social media because of mental health issues. I've been really honest with her and saying, this is the information that's coming out. I'm a little less concerned based on, I know what you're viewing on social media. And it led to this conversation of how many, pictures does it take to get the right thing? And we're leading with our most authentic selves on social media, or we're being told to lead with our most authentic selves. And yet what shows up is this like very curated version of ourselves, and how dangerous that is for all of us. And so allowing ourselves to be in that place where we're not an expert, we're not perfect, and we're just going to experiment. And we have a really cool place that we can do that, both in social media and in the privacy of our own homes.
It's all the conversations. It is. And as kids, this is a whole separate thing, which I've kind of created, and that's going to be coming out next year, about parenting. And there's no manual. And as the kids, through all the stages, kind of we go through, and we kind of are learning about, and so much is based off of communication. I mean, I just find, and my daughter reminds me all the time, she's a 20-year-old. She's like, more you say no, the more I'm going to want to do it. So what are you going to do? I'm just kind of like, oh my God, can you not talk to me that way? And yeah, you're kind of right. It's true. Anytime somebody says no, then you just want to do it more. But just watching the kids go through their creative journey and their journey of who they are as people and who they're growing into, and where they are, and how they make mistakes and how they rebound from them. And it's just interesting when you get the privilege of watching all of that.
Well, and with our generation, with our kids, right, they're getting, and this is not to say anything bad about our parents, it's just our generation is more self-actualized, right? At a younger age, we became more self-actualized. So our children therefore had that growing up. So they handle mistakes in a much different way than we did. Sometimes it causes more perfectionism. Sometimes it causes less. Anyway, whole nother conversation. Hollis, what are you doing in the world right now that you want to make sure that people know about, and where can people find you?
Thank you. Thank you. So appreciated the conversation and everything. So I have 2 multi-author books that I am gathering for at this time. One, we're coming really close to the end. Shout It from the Rooftops, Powerful Stories That Transform Lives. Just have one more spot open for 500 words. If anybody wants to kind of dip their toe in there and just kind of, all they have to do is write. And editing, formatting, cover design, all that's taken care of. And the other one is called I Love You Because I Love Me Because. And this is more of an expansion. We're expanding what the word love means. And we're also kind of expanding the idea of a book. It's photography, video, and or writing. So it's an interactive book. So that is going to be launching in December. So anybody who's interested in that, you can just go to my website, iamcreativephilly.com. and reach out. And there is, under Express Yourself Publishing, there is all the information on the offers. And there we go.
Love it.
So cool. Louise, do you know what we have coming up next?
I do. Surprisingly, we have Phoebe coming up next. It's going to be a great conversation all around from this entitled to empowered and what that means in our lives, and how do we transition into a place that we're behind the wheel, driving our own car for a change.
It has been a really interesting, so last week we had Shannon on. Shannon and Hollis, actually, we found out know each other. And I know that Hollis and Phoebe know each other, but I had no idea that they were going to be back to back when they scheduled their times. So it's super. I'm like, look at all these little synergies.
Everybody had to tune in for Phoebe. She's amazing.
She is amazing. She is amazing. And so are you, Hollis. We are so grateful that you spent some time with us today to share your brilliance and to birth something into the world with us.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Hollis. We appreciate you so much.
Okay. Take care, everyone. See you later.
Bye for now.